button. Yep, I think so. Yep. Okay. Lovely day. Damn. It's here. We're done with winter again. I survived another one of them. So, I've got to feel... gotta feel. Yeah, forget it. Anyway, never mind that part. Just don't know who... Even I find the end a little obnoxious. So that's sort of why... Look, butterfly. Holy shit, butterfly. That's bizarre. You must be from Florida or something. What are you doing here, you crazy little fuck? That's way early. Anyway, came on some sort of trade wind, I guess. So the traditional value versus real value. So that's really the game. You know, we're raised with this idea of life being the value, living, saving a life. And that's all kind of crap. You can't save a life. You can only lengthen it, as I've argued. And we kind of demonstrate that we really don't have any real value associated with that. We really don't think that it's about how many hours of life are being lived. Total. So, we've got 7 billion people. Theoretically, there could be many billions more if we were willing to compromise a small percentage of our lifestyle. We could create a Soylent Green kind of world, except nicer. To try to mold all of the matter we could into the form of a sentient being so we could do this wonderful thing called living. And we sort of demonstrate that we don't care about any of that crap. As I pointed out, if we added up all the time human beings spend lamenting the absence of Martians or Venetians, it comes to almost nothing, right? As a percentage of neurology, computational time, that wouldn't even show up on the radar at all. I've probably mentioned it more, and I'm mocking it. I'm mocking the notion, and I've mentioned it more than it's actually existed in the mind of a human being. So realistically, there's sort of an indication there of a flaw in this idea that we value quantity, because we don't. We only do it in lip service. We only value life in lip service. We value is our life. We value our welfare. We value our experience. It's just kind of a lie when people talk about the rest of it in terms of any real value. And it is kind of built out of this team spirit crap. So it's like you're the star player on the team, and you just kind of pretend that, the other guys helped, and you give lip service to it, but you're the game, you're the man, you're the one, you're the team. The team is just, you have to support the team, because without the team, you don't get to show how great you are. But you think you're it. And that's how people think. People are self-focused. There's nothing wrong. I'm only critiquing it in the sense that let's if we're going to be thinkers and talkers about reality, let's cut through some of this bullshit and talk about reality. Talk about really what goes on in terms of the real value, not traditional lip service value, but real value. And like I say, you see it in the world. People lament, oh, the poor, oh, woe is me, but they just lament it. If they were given a solution to the poor, and it's going to cost them anything real, I won't say that. I won't say they wouldn't press the 3% solution. It's just that we're not really offered that, because every time somebody comes up with a solution, the solution is usually run by people with a self-interest who aren't going to create the solution. They're actually just going to create a job for themselves, a living for themselves, a profit for themselves. And, the poor will just be an excuse. The charity will be fake, ultimately. It'll just be a mechanism, a good facade for another industry, another excuse to make themselves feel good about themselves rather than actually solve the problem. And we sort of see that everywhere. That's the definition of why things fail, is because the selfish organisms aren't required to be unselfish. They're allowed to cheat all over the fucking place, and they cheat the very concept they're supposed to be trying to defend. It's like giving, these are sort of automatic things, give the poor people food, they're hungry. Well, if you give them food without any string plugging up their vaginas, they'll only make babies out of the food, and you only make more people who will need food tomorrow. So this is one of the mechanisms that creates poverty, is this whole idea that you don't do anything to regulate who makes the poor. The poor people make the poor. I mean, the rich people are exploiting them. They create the opportunity for poverty. They create almost the necessity of it. The desperation, but they're not the cause, in the sense that ultimately it's the rich fucks, it's the poor fucks who enslave their own children, who have no prospect of their kids doing anything but reliving their empty lives. A lot of people out today. Young ones, in touch. And so anyway, kids are distracting. Anyway, the point is, so we get back to this whole argument about what's valuable, and that's why it's going to be really complicated. We have thought experiments based on without premises where we're agreeing on what has value. I would say that a medical system that provided, that primarily provided deal with death services, that just helped you get over your illness by gracefully sliding out, would be hugely more beneficial to the human race than a fight death strategy. Defeat death. Because you can't win. You won't win. How you doing? Hi. So I don't think you win with a strategy that somehow you're going to defeat death, because you won't. Death will arrive eventually, and all you'll do is prolong it, put it off for a little while to do more of the same that you could have done more efficiently through some other mechanism. You could have paid the 50 cents to save a life in Africa instead of paying $50,000 to prolong a broken human being here who's just going to be kind of miserable and disabled anyway. It is a little bit preposterous as a logical equation. It's just what are you getting for your money? What are you getting for the value resources squandered? I've made this argument before. If we were doing this as keepers of a rat game, if we were gods in charge of the rats, and just metaphor that as gods in charge of humans, but let's just make it more real for us, and they're just rats, and you kind of know, well, making more rats doesn't really matter. All I want to do is make sure the rats playing the game have as high a quality of life as possible. And so if we were engineering rat life, I think we would be able to understand just how there's no point in these wastes. That these wastes that we impose on ourselves and each other are all wastes made out of emotion, made out of selfish reactions, subjective, personal fears, gluttonies, ambitions, desires, all of these projections of value that aren't recognitions or diagnoses of real value. They have no real correlate. They are entirely ooey gooey bullshit emotional reactions that have value in themselves, the fact that we have emotions, but they don't have any value. Doc. They don't have any value in defining or describing reality. They cheat reality. They distort reality. They make us think reality is different than it is. And that's the catch here, is our fear and our desire is irrationally based, primarily, fundamentally. And that's very dangerous to our judgment. So if we're acting as caretakers for something for which we have no emotional stake, for which we can't generate some personal ambition or personal welfare, or if I do it to them, somebody's going to do it to me kind of bullshit. If you take that out of the scenario, all of a sudden you can see huge economies to be gained by not, doing these. You wouldn't bother with medical centers to replace organs inside the rats, to exchange out organs. You just say, well, let's just trade that rat that's broken for that new rat over here that's perfectly healthy and that would have died because of the food and resources that other rat ate. So let's maximize the existence of the healthy rats and minimize the existence of the unhealthy rats. You just do the logical thing in the best interest of the rats. And that's where best interest of the rats has gotten lost in our philosophical conversations, because people are talking about their best interest, the best interest of their kind, their nation, their race, their people, and it's not about the best interest of consciousness, which is, in my opinion, the only rational best interest. It's the only best interest to be concerned about is the entire interest. All interests are interests. All we's are we's. All me's are me's. All you's are you's. If you're not understanding that, and understanding you can't gain at the price of somebody else's pain. If you can't understand that walking across somebody else's body and stepping on their face to get across the stream or something is not acceptable, you paid too high a price for the crossing. You've gained at too high you've compromised something of more value than you preserved, in the sense of preventing your feet from getting wet. It was a bad value exchange, and that's the reality of our existence. We can't separate ourselves from the reality that we are one sentient on a game board covered with sentience, and that we can't steal comfort from a bunch of sentience out there to satisfy our comfort. And there's no good math there. We're consuming more than we're producing, quite simply. What we gain isn't worth the pain. And if we had to really acknowledge the price, to see it, to shake its hand, to get up and close and personal with it, then you could understand that. And that's sort of the threat of these thought experiments, is that some of these end up bringing it home, getting it closer, making it more visible. And it also has the downside as thinkers, because again, we're still emotional animals, and we have to keep so vigilant in preventing ourselves from emotionalizing a subject, like longevity, like understanding that even though it's horrible that somebody might die young, it's not so horrible if they would have lived to die slowly. That the fact is they're better off dying young than dying horribly and slowly. That these trade-offs are real, and they're just factual. And that's all I can say. They're the facts, and our emotional crapola about always hating endings and losing doesn't recognize that sometimes the losses are creating a huge gain. We just don't feel that, because we just know how much we hate losing. We hate endings. We hate change. We hate the thought of being the victim. And so as long as we're free of that, as long as we have space between us and victimhood, our arrogance is free, and we don't have to associate ourselves with anything else but being defensive of victimhood, even though it's a completely impractical non-acceptance of the fact that victims often create victims. That starving people create poor people who become starving people. That they will perpetuate that whatever you feed them, whatever energy you put into them, they will create more negative energy that will need resolution. They'll need more food, not less. You can't fix their problem by solving their short-term problem. You have to solve their systemic, their functional problem. All right. So anyway, traditional versus real. An important kind of subject. Maybe I'll title it that. Okay. So next time and such.